Welcome back to Precision Riflecraft, and thank you for joining me. I thought I'd start a tradition on the channel and do a retrospective at the end of each year, looking back at the progress on the channel, and take a moment to thank all of you for supporting the project, for watching and for sharing the videos, commenting and doing all that you do. You're the reason the project is continuing into the new year, so Happy New Year! What can we say about 2021? It was a terrible year for many people, and sadly for some people it was their last year. I'd like to dedicate this episode to my friend Greg, or Grzegorz Gospodarek, in Słupsk, Poland. He unfortunately lost his life to the Wuhan Coronavirus last month in December of 2021. And I'd like to take just a moment to remember him and his contributions to the long-range shooting community. Greg competed and was quite an accomplished long-range shooter. Here he is at a match in Poland shooting out past 2,200 meters with his Cadex 338 Lapua rifle. And it was that rifle that first caught my eye. That's what kind of started the conversation. We had a lot of interesting chats over Facebook about shooting and about the shooting community and about Polish culture and history, because we share that common heritage. And it really breaks my heart that we Polish riflemen have lost a true patriot. So, you know, I'd like to dedicate this to him. And if anyone is up in heaven shooting distant clouds, it's Greg.
Cel, kurwa, jak centralnie! To się nagrało? Dobra.
So it's a new year, guys, and I'm going to make the most of it this year. I try to make the most of every year of life, every day above ground as a gift. And today what I'm doing is a little bit of reconnaissance work. I'm out here in the coast mountains of BC in an area I haven't explored before today. I've got my backcountry skis over here, and basically I'm skiing up a mountain and exploring a little bit, looking for opportunities to shoot in new places. I do enjoy connecting with nature and being in these beautiful open spaces and getting my PT, getting my physical training, because a good rifleman is a fit rifleman. So I do enjoy coming out here and putting in some work for these videos I make. So that's what's happening today. That's why I'm sitting on this little embankment here looking out over the coast mountains with you. So let's look back at what for me was a bright spot of 2021, which is my progress on the channel. The channel's pilot, or first episode, was episode 1, where we shot 4.3-inch clay pigeons from 440 meters or 481 yards. It began as a sort of impromptu walkthrough of dialing in a firing solution for that distance, and it morphed into an episode and then the channel. I ended up introducing it with this sort of cheesy fireside chat, holding up the pigeon, showing you the size of the target that I was engaging. I'd set up 6 of them. One of them actually fell over by the time I got the firing position set up. So we had 5 to shoot at. I took 5 shots on those clay pigeons and hit the first 4 in a row before missing the 5th. One really nice little moment in the video was this beautiful vapor trail on the 3rd shot. You can really see the flight of the bullet, and that was kind of a nice thing to capture. The environmental conditions were just right for that, even though I was using a cheaper spotting scope. It's a Vortex Diamondback spotting scope, which I'll discuss in an upcoming episode of my spotting system. I also introduced Bear, and I like to think that he's the real star of the show. And the other star of the show was my Savage FC PSR 308 rifle, which is a fantastic rifle in Savage's law enforcement series that I've talked quite a bit about on the channel. Episode 2 was a discussion of prone position for maximum accuracy. It kind of described my approach to shooting from the prone position, and a bit of discussion on even the dogma of the prone position. I kind of encourage people to do what works for them and not just take any instructor's word for it. It's really important to be comfortable and to be able to relax, and that's what brings out your best shooting when using that prone position. And I did try to convey my thoughts on that in the episode. What I did was I set up a 222 milliliter mini soda can, which is 2 1/4 inches wide, at that same distance as the previous episode, 440 meters. Discussed a couple of things. We discussed how to calculate the angular size of a target in minutes of angle. We discussed bean bags for supporting the back end of your rifle. And we hit that soda can with our cold bore shot with our first round, and that was a nice conclusion to the episode. Episodes 3 and 4 were kind of a flop. This is my review of his and her SIGS, my P320 RX 9mm and Mrs. Riflecraft's SIG 1911-22. I thought it was actually a good tabletop review. I guess maybe I'm not good at them because they really tanked in the ratings department. They were my poorest performers of the year, and that's fine. They're there for posterity. You know, this is a learning process for me, so I'm finding out what people like and what they don't. I think some good ground was covered. I discussed some of the accidental discharge issues that have besmirched the P320's reputation, not necessarily fairly in my subjective opinion, but we discussed them and tried to shed some light on that aspect of SIG's first striker-fired modular pistol. We discussed that modularity, and we stripped it apart to show you how easy it is to field strip. I also discussed the advantages of red dots and suppressor height night sights. I showed how a red dot, once you learn how to use it, allows you to focus on your target and not your sights, which I think has a tremendous tactical advantage. And I also discussed the motion detection technology in the SIG Romeo 1 red dot optic, which a lot of red dot optics have these days. It's very helpful not to have to switch it on when you go to use it. With Mrs. Riflecraft's 1911-22, we discussed who really makes the pistol. It's not actually SIG, it's German Sport Guns, made it under a license for SIG when SIG took a controlling interest in the company. It's a great pistol, you know, ours has been perfectly reliable. Some people have complained about it, so I talked about how to get the most reliability from your GSG or your SIG 1911-22 if you own one. I began a discussion on white lithium grease, which I'll return to. This is a really interesting topic. It's interesting to guys like me, it's interesting to gun nerds, not necessarily everybody, but this is something I'll return to because in many cases people are using oil when they should be using grease. I also discussed some of the upgrade suggestions I have if you do buy a 1911, how to get a better grip out of it, and the many different flavors of the SIG/GSG 1911-22. They do give you a lot of options, so I thought I'd show you those while we're on the topic. Episode 5 was a really good one. This was definitely one of my best 2 or 3 episodes of the year. It's how cant error affects your point of impact. And what I did was I brought out a digital level so I can actually dial in a specific cant value into the rifle when I tilt it in one direction or another. We discussed bubble levels that are available on the market and how to properly mount them to ensure that you get the maximum performance out of your rifle system. And yeah, we took some interesting shots that episode. I took a cold bore shot to verifier 0, and that was an absolutely dead center cold bore shot, which was then discussed in a later episode. We'll return to that. And basically what we did is we showed the effect of cant error at that distance with that cartridge. It's a 308 rifle, 2,700 feet per second. It's a 24-inch 308. And we showed the real-world effect of cant error in the field at that distance. So what we did is we canted the rifle 1 degree to the left, and we took a shot. And we showed the deviation from the cold bore shot before then canting it 3 degrees in the opposite direction to the right. Took another shot, and we barely missed the target. Now we're off this 6-inch steel plate with that 3-degree cant. It's starting to have a very serious effect on the precision of the rifle system. And then just for laughs, we canted it 5 degrees to the left, and I ended up blowing off a huge chunk of rock. In the episode I said moss because that's just kind of what I thought it was when I did the instant replay on the tiny screen there in the bright sun, but later I realized that it was actually a big chunk of rock we blew off the face. And yeah, that was 5-degree cant to the left, nowhere near the target. So I think that was a useful episode. It showed the real-world effects of cant error and why it's important to eliminate it. The next episode, episode 6, was protect your dog's hearing with MUFFS. And this is a really important one, I think, if you bring a dog out to the field. I love bringing Bear out. Today was a bit too cold. It's only about 4 degrees below 0 right now. But it is a little chilly for him. I know he gets a bit whiny, so I wanted to spare him the discomfort. Being that it's below 0. But yeah, you know, when the conditions favor it, I do bring him out, and I do love having him with me. And we talked about dogs' sensitivity to noise and why it's important to protect them. I showed off this product called MUFFS and explained how to properly fit them to your dog. And then we sort of judged the effectiveness of this product by looking at Bear's reaction when I burned off 3 rounds. The episode also had a sort of a teachable moment where I had an FTF, a failure to fire, and I discussed best practices for safe shooting when you do have a failure to ignite a round, so it's worth watching for that reason as well. Episode 7 was Does Grass Affect Your Bullet? And this is an interesting concept. I don't think that it worked out quite as well as I hoped it would. We did succeed in the sense that we showed that, like rain, grass affects the shooter, not the bullet, affecting the shooter's ability to see the target properly. And I introduced viewers to a new and hopefully recurring character on the channel, which is the Stick, a mythical creature that sort of rises up from the earth. The Stick was born with Seiko TRG in each hand, though I hear he's moving on to other rifles, but at the time of that episode he was still running his 2 Seikos, and that's a TRG in 308 and another one in 6.5 Creedmoor. And we showed off those rifles, and we also introduced you to our spot in the grasslands of the BC interior. It's the first time I took the channel out there, and that's a beautiful place that we're going to continue to see more of on the channel. So basically what we did is we set up this rifle, and we ran it out to just over 500 meters, and we started with a 308, and we shot a 0.68 MOA group without the grass. So let's give it the Mako quality paint job before putting the stick behind some grass and watching the group open up to 0.9 MOA. One of the complaints I got about that episode is that I didn't give the minute of angle figures in the episode, so I'm giving them to you now. That first group was 0.68 MOA, and the second one, once we put the stick behind the grass, was 0.9 MOA. Unfortunately, after that, we had an issue with the 6.5 Creedmoor, and it just was not working for us. So what ended up happening is we started out with that rifle without the grass, same as before, and we shot a 1.28 MOA group without that grass in the way. And the group definitely opened up once we put the stick behind the grass with that 6.5 Creedmoor, but we couldn't measure the group because one of the rounds was off the target altogether. So yeah, we did have an issue, but we were able to show that, especially that 308, that like rain, grass affects the shooter, not the bullet. Now, episode 8 was one that I am really proud of. To me, I think it'll always be my favorite because I've been trying to get my dad out to try some long-range shooting for many years, and I finally got him out to the field. And we had a wonderful day together. I know it was very hard for him because he's 70 years old, and it was a real pain in the neck for him, you know, asking him to be in the prone position for a good part of the day. He was definitely hurting toward the end of it, but he put in a fantastic performance, and I'm very, very proud of him. This is something I, can't wait to show my grandchildren one day. So, this is definitely my favorite video of the year, and basically what I did was try to bring to you, the viewer, a one-on-one tutorial walking someone through their very, very first time long-range shooting. He had some experience plinking and shooting rifles as a young man, but that was his first time behind a precision rifle, and he did extremely well. He ran the rifle out at 256 meters, and then 557 meters. Nice, right edge. And then 815 meters, or 891 yards, and connected at all of those yardages except the last one. He came very, very, very close. He just missed the target on one of his attempts at 891 yards, and then he was sort of worn out, and I took over. It was a very hot day. It was over 30 degrees Celsius, I think. And yeah, I rang that steel at 891 yards 3 times in a row, and we called it a day. But it was a beautiful day. We saw some horses and other wildlife we didn't get to film, like a bear and some coyotes, and the filming of that episode for the first time was through a Vortex Razor HD Gen 2 scope, which I'll discuss. Like I mentioned, I have an upcoming episode on my spotting system. I'll discuss that optic as well. It was great for some yardages, not so great for others, and we'll get back to that. But yeah, Dad did a great job, and I was very, very proud of him. Episode 9 revisited that episode on cant error, and we basically brought out a caliper out to the field. It was dead center, cold bore first round hit, and I wanted to see how much the point of impact deviated from my point of aim. And at 440 meters, or 481 yards, it turned out to be a variation of 0.03 MOA, so it was a sub 0.1 MOA cold bore shot. It was actually just over 1/8 of 1 inch, so I was very, very proud of that. And I discussed the equipment that made that possible, the Savage Law Enforcement Series rifle and my Federal Premium ammunition. I went into a bit of discussion about that before talking about Savage rifles in general, and bringing out a 70-year-old Savage Model 340 bolt action 30-30 and shooting some cans for you, discussing a little bit the heritage of Savage Arms. They're a very, very good company that doesn't quite get the respect they've earned, in my views. So that was a fun episode to make too. Episode 10 was Ballistic BDC Reticles, Do They Work? And I think this was the best video of the year overall. It was very informative, I've been told, and basically what we did is we tested a popular ballistic reticle and critiqued the technology of ballistic or bullet drop compensating reticles. I explained what I call objective versus subjective reticles and talked about the differences of different reticles available on the market. I talked about how to correctly install a low power variable optic, an LPVO, which is the kind of optic that typically has these types of reticles. Discussed height over bore, ammo selection, all of that kind of stuff. And we did some ammo testing in the Ruger American Ranch 5.56 rifle we used in that episode, specifically with LPVOs in mind, and hopefully that was helpful to some of you. We also did a field evaluation of the Tacticam film through scope system. It didn't do particularly well, and I've sold it since. I just wasn't happy with it. It wasn't appropriate for my applications. But yeah, going back to that Vortex optic, that LPVO, we tested all 5 hash marks of the AR BDC reticle that optic uses, from its 50 yard zero all the way out to 600 yards. I learned a lot. I hope you learned something too if you watched that episode. I think it was a particularly good one. I also introduced the Bushnell T-Series first focal plane spotting scope that I've been using since then. Episode 11 was another tabletop review. It was beware of this fatal flaw in some second focal plane scopes. And this one did much better than my previous tabletop reviews with those pistols. I think it was a helpful look at how second focal plane scopes differ from first focal plane scope designs. We basically took this Athlon second focal plane scope and discussed a flaw in its design, comparing it to a very similar Vortex second focal plane scope that did not have this particular defect. If you're interested in optics, then I think this is a good one to watch. I also talked about the overall quality of Athlon, which I'm very, very happy with. I ended up replacing it with another Athlon, actually a first focal plane model. The episode is a little controversial as well, in that I got quite a few critical comments both on the YouTube and on my Facebook page about how this particular defect I discussed is not actually a defect. I can assure you that it is a defect, at least in my considered opinion. As a matter of fact, a lot of long-range shooting instructors shun second focal plane scopes altogether for this tendency for this issue to come up, even with implementations such as that of the Vortex that I considered not to have this defect. So for example, Tiborosaurus Rex, who has an incredible reputation, he says not to use second focal plane scopes at all for long-range precision applications, even if they're designed like the Vortex in the video, which I thought was designed quite well. My opinion is a little bit more moderate. I do have second focal plane scopes, I do use them, and I think they can be appropriate in long-range precision applications, provided that certain conditions are met, which the Athlon clearly did not meet. So that's something worth watching if you're in the market for a scope and looking at second focal plane optics. Episode 12 was an interesting one. It was my first and hopefully last scam alert episode. Unfortunately, a certain retailer that I can't mention for legal reasons is knowingly selling defective guns. And one of the things I should have pointed out in the episode is, what they could be doing, what they should be doing is simply marking it down. If they disclosed that this particular rifle, which they sold over and over again, this particular rifle that was damaged, they just kept selling it over and over again, they could simply discount it and sell it as is, and I think that would be perfectly appropriate if they told their buyers what they're getting into. But unfortunately they're not doing that. They're just selling this defective rifle, this cosmetically damaged rifle, as brand new, undamaged, and doing it over and over again. Caught them red-handed and made a little video to alert you to this and to avoid you finding yourself in the same position I found myself, arguing with them to take it back. Episode 13, the last one prior to this one, was a really, really interesting one I'm super proud of. It was a tremendous honor of mine to interview a great American by the name of Sam Garday, who is a retired police sniper and an ex-paratrooper. We talked about a lot of things. The episode is my first one over an hour. Most of it was that interview. There was an introduction where I talked about the differences between police and military sniping, and then we got into that interview discussing a famous incident from 1993 where Columbus, Ohio police sniper named Mike Plum had shot a revolver out of the hands of a suicidal man. And that episode has some very interesting discussion on police tactics and practices and philosophy and history and all kinds of stuff. I encourage you to watch it if you share my interest in police snipers. Well, that's it, guys. I thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this little recap of 2021 on the Precision Riflecraft channel. I really enjoyed making all these videos, and I've gotten a lot of exercise doing it, skiing up and hiking up and snowshoeing up to places like this and doing my thing. So I thank you so much for joining me. When I'm out here, sometimes it's just me, sometimes it's Bear and I, sometimes the stick just rises up out of the earth, but regardless of who's with me, if anyone, I feel you with me, I feel all of you with me, and I thank you so much for joining me on this journey. We got a lot of exciting things to look forward to. I have some great ideas for 2022 for this year, and I'm looking forward to getting into them. So thanks again, and hope to see you again next time.